my name is Jessa, and please join me as we look together top 10 bizarre historical events school never taught us. And before we begin, in the last video I was in, top 10 haunted places in Ireland you should never visit alone, I did give you guys a riddle. Did you get it? The riddle was, it has keys but no locks, it has space but no room, you can enter but you can't go inside. The answer is, drumroll please, a keyboard. Your next riddle will be at the end of this video. Anyways, let's get started. Number 10. Moose Pile. A 16th century astronomer named Tycho Brahe was famously and fabulously wealthy man of noble birth, and he was always trying to use his personal treasury to fund weird projects. After losing his nose from a duel while he was drunk, he bought a replacement nose made up of gold and silver rather than wax. He even carried a vial of paste to adhere the fake nose in case it ever popped off. And he also had an obsession with pets. In 1592, he had a correspondent about a mysterious animal called a rix. Apparently it was faster than a deer and it wielded shorter antlers. Tycho also asked the same friend if he had ever seen a real moose, which he actually had one, and the moose would follow Tycho around like a little puppy. Except it's not a little puppy, it was just a really big moose. And this moose was addicted to Danish beer. Of course Tycho was just down to show off his beer drinking moose, and during one event he invited a bunch of guests to a party and had the moose there. As the dinner went on, the moose got very drunk and it drank so much beer that it got inebriated and it fell down a bunch of stairs and it died. Number 9. A crap disaster. During an intense meeting between German noblemen of the Holy Roman Empire about land disputes and rivaling titles, many of these nobility gather regularly for diet meetings to meditate the arguments and try to reinstate peace. But then suddenly during one of these meetings in 1184, the floorboards above them broke and killed 60 to 100 nobles as they fell into the latrines and met their untimely demise. The weight of the large gathering, most likely amplified by their heavy chain metal attire, caused the floorboards to collapse, and the nobles plunged into a pool of fecal matter, many of them drowning or being crushed between the feces pit and the fallen floor. The most ironic of these deaths was a count, who often joked that he would rather perish in his own poop if he ever failed his title. So, see guys, manifestation really does work. Number 8. Please don't stop the music. One day on July 1518, Frau Trophea became patient zero in a dancing phenomenon that claimed nearly 400 victims. Trophea danced silently, involuntarily by herself for more than a week, and as other citizens of Strasbourg began contracting the fatal disease, they also started dancing. Local doctors even ordered the creation of stages and the presence of musicians in hope of comforting the unfortunate victims, but the physicians believed that if they allowed the dancing to continue, patients would ultimately dance the fever out of their bodies. The hysteria lasted for about 2 months and claimed countless victims to stroke, heart attacks, or exhaustion before it subsided. Experts are still unclear about what caused the plague. Hypotheses include the populist fear of Saint Vitus' wrath, as he was the patron saint of dancers, or the consumption of a hallucinogenic mold that grows on rye bread, and psychogenetic disorders. Number 7. Mother Knows Best. We have to thank the stars for Mother T. Byrne's mom, as Harry T. Byrne had every intention of voting against the 19th Amendment, a law that would have made it illegal to deny the right to vote to any citizen based on their sex, which effectively granted women the right to vote. It was first introduced to Congress in 1878 and it wasn't fully certified till 42 years later, and Harry planned on voting against it. Even though some states had already allowed some women to vote, the federal amendment had not been yet ratified. Connecticut, Vermont, North Carolina, and Florida all held power to sway the nation through election that year, but they refused to consider the resolution, so its eyes were all on Tennessee. Typically when it came to rallies at this time on the amendment, those who were for the right for women to vote would wear a yellow rose, and for those who were opposing would wear red. Harry was wearing red that day, but suddenly during the tiebreaker it was up to him to make the vote. To everyone's surprise, despite wearing the red rose, he said aye in agreement to the nation adopting the 19th Amendment. In an interview when he was asked why did he say yes despite wearing the opposing rose, he said in his hand was a letter written by his mom pleading him to make sure to make the right choice and to consider the vote for women's rights. When it came to the final vote, he thought about what she had pleaded for and did so, not just for the women in the nations, which would have cascaded many other adjoining laws to women's rights, but for her, his mom. Number 6. Finding Nemo. When it comes to sororities and joining a club, there's sometimes initiations and weird things you gotta do to get in. Or it could just be a typically weird college thing, and no matter what you do, you just do something dumb just cuz. A Harvard freshman named Lothrop Withington Jr. swallowed a live fish as a publicity stunt while running for class president. A goldfish swallowing trend spread amongst college campuses in the late 1930s, and a Time magazine had even documented the event in 1939 saying Joe College was busy gulping goldfish as he garnished it with salt, mayonnaise, or ketchup, and then he chased it all down with a glass of milk, orange juice, or soda pop. But one routine did not vary, as each goldfish was gulped alive. They called them goldfish cultists and continued to do this trend even more so as one university student gulped up to 36 live goldfish. Another student was cheered on by 100 students and 3 policemen as he ate up to 42. Number 5. Can someone get that? Do you remember how in the early 2010s people would do random trends like the Harlem Shake, the mannequin challenge, or like planking? Well, in the 1950s, the teens did the same chaotic energies our current teens do, which is suddenly a phone booth stuffing trend first gained popularity outside the US, but once it arrived stateside in spring 1959, kids couldn't help but join in. People would cram their bodies into narrow spaces like olives in a jar. Some adopted their other methods such as stacking themselves horizontally, like planking. The world record for the phone boothing stuffing came in March 1959 when 25 people in South Africa piled into a booth. Incidentally, the phone rang during the stunt, but no one could actually answer it. By the end of 1959, like all trends, the phone booth stuffer trend died, and to be honest, I haven't seen a recent trend lately. Is that just all gone now? Number 4, to new heights. Another trend that seems to be unaware with history books was that of pole-sitting kids in the 1920s. Before stuffing oneself into the phone booth or eating goldfish, another trend was kids climbing up telephone poles. Between the mid to late 1920s, kids in rural America were finding perches on neighborhood telephone poles, and kids would construct seats on the top of the poles and challenge their friends to see who could stay up there the longest. Some of the most die-hard pole sitters, whose mothers evidently did not scream to them to get down, could last more than just a day or two. Maybe they packed a lunch in their back pocket, but I did always wonder how those kids got down. I know people would probably do what firefighters do and just slide down the poles, but I can't stand heights, so I don't know. Number 3, apple pie. If I threw an apple at you, would you go out with me? Is what people did in ancient Greek as a way of flirting. In ancient Greece, the apple was considered sacred to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, so to throw an apple at someone was to symbolically declare someone's love. Similarly, to catch it was symbolically to show that person that you accepted their love. According to Plato, he states, "I throw an apple at you, and if you're willing to love me, take it and share your girlhood with me. But if your thoughts are what I pray they are not, even then take it and consider how short-lived is beauty." Wow, okay, now I understand what he meant. I mean, I do not recommend you asking your crush by throwing an apple at them, because even if you might have the right intention, that in general terms deserve the right execution and just not throwing fruit at someone's forehead. Number 2, light the cig. Like I mentioned with the Mother Knows Best fact at number 7, when it came to women's rights, it also included women's rights to smoke. Also called the torches of freedom was a phrase used to encourage women's smoking by exploiting women's aspirations for a better life during the 20th century first wave feminism in the United States. Also called the torches of freedom was a phrase used to encourage women's smoking by exploiting women's aspirations for a better life, especially during the early 20th century first wave feminism in the United States. Cigarettes were described as symbols of emancipation and equality with men, as it was very common and frequent that at least 70% of smokers were men. The Torches of Freedom campaign became a legendary milestone in the history of public relations, still cited in marketing textbooks, which claimed that it caused a national debate and prompted emancipated women to smoke in public. But if you'd also want to put it into perspective in this way, it was also some way of a marketing tactic to increase the sales of women to buy cigarettes, and in doing so also needed change in the laws. But despite the capitalistic goals of these companies that they had, it did help other laws follow suit many years down the line. Number 1, free falling. Honestly, we don't need James Bond, we have Vesna Volvovic. Born in Serbia when it was part of Yugoslavia, she worked as a flight attendant for the former airline JAT. At the age of 22, she was on board for her shift on the way to Copenhagen when suddenly she was told that last minute she wasn't even scheduled for that flight. But she was already on the plane, and it was all due to the fact that there was another flight attendant with the same first name. Suddenly, on this flight, a briefcase bomb blew off and it caused the plane to crash. Volvovic was the only survivor and was the only person who had survived a fall from such a height. She, as many others in retrospect, fell from a 33,330 feet crash with no parachute, and she was the only one who ever lived. So, what was your favorite on the list, and did you learn anything interesting today? Please let me know. And for your next riddle, are you ready? What invention lets you look right through a wall? Be sure to put your answer in the comments below, and I'll reveal the answer in the next video, Top 10 Evil People in History Who Invented Unspeakable Creations. That's all for today. Thank you for joining me. My name is Jessa. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see your beautiful faces in the next one. Bye!